5 tips for sourcing rent-to-rent property. The first thing I would do if I'm looking for rent-to-rent property, I'm looking to get started, I would look to approach friends, relatives I have that may already have some property at the moment or investment property to have a conversation with them. Hopefully they already know you, they like you, they trust you. It'll be much easier to do business with them than it'll be out to go to the market. So the first thing we want to do, we want to look friends, family who already own property. Now it may be that their property is already let, that they already have a tenant in it, but you could find out when it's going to next become available, or maybe when that tenancy comes to an end, and you can start having these conversations to deal with any objections that they may have to be able to do that. That is what I call low-hanging fruit. That's where we would start. Secondly, you're looking for landlords that are advertising directly themselves. So for example, landlords putting property on a Gumtree, for instance, or they might be using something like Open Rent to advertise on Rightmove. These are owners of the property that are marketing it directly into the marketplace for tenants as opposed to going through an agent. And the advantage of that is it means you get to have a conversation directly with the owner and the decision maker rather than trying to go through an agent and convince the agent and then get to the owner of the property. The third thing to do is then to go to the market where property's already been advertised, i.e. it's already been advertised by letting agents, and it's letting agents that we want to have conversations with. But when we're approaching letting agents, there's a few things that we need to bear in mind. Generally speaking, in my experience, you'll get a much better result working with the smaller independents than you will get from the bigger nationals. Because even if you get an agent who wants to work with you, who understands you, often their systems, their processes, or their managers will block what you're trying to achieve in a bigger organization. A smaller one-office agent, you most likely can be speaking with the decision maker there anyway, and it'll be easier to work with them. And with rent-to-rent, and when we're talking about going through intermediaries like agents, generally what you'll find is the first one is much more difficult to get. Once you've got the first one, the second and third tend to come easier because now you've got a proven track record as well. This is what you're already doing. When going through the agent, one of the first things we want to try and establish is that tenant doing what we call a letter only or management. What that means is, on behalf of the landlord, are they going to be just finding a tenant and then passing it to the landlord and charging a fee? Or are they going to be finding a tenant and then dealing with the ongoing management on a day-to-day basis? Now, one of the ways to ask this question is when you're speaking to the agent, you can just say, so with this particular property, are you doing a tenant find only, or will you be doing the ongoing management and you would be my landlord effectively going forward? So the way to ask this question with an agent is, what you'd say to him is, with this particular property, will you be doing a tenant find only, or will you be doing the ongoing management and I'll be dealing with yourselves on a month-to-month basis by paying the rent and dealing with any managing queries? So this is a fairly normal question that they might expect, and it gives you a clue whether they're going to be finding a tenant for the landlord only, in which case their job is just to vet and then connect with the landlord, and then you'll be dealing with the landlord going forward, or whether there'll be management in place. The reason for this is because if there is management in place going forward, when you're pitching your service, your offering, it's important that the agent doesn't feel threatened that you're going to be pushing them out, i.e. you want to manage the property and push that agent away, because clearly they're not going to want to work with you. But by understanding which service they're doing for the landlord, you would pitch and present accordingly so that the agent doesn't feel threatened. Number 4 is one that's worked really well for us over the years, particularly when we started out. And this is looking at student properties that can be repurposed to general working tenants. So what I was doing was looking for properties that were being targeted for students that were maybe a little bit further away from the university. Maybe the property didn't look so great, and they'd also missed the window where the tenants tend to move in. So what happened is that the landlord had missed the cycle to get into having a year of students in that particular property. So that landlord often becomes more motivated. They're keen to get somebody in the property. They don't want to wait around another year before the next student cycle comes through. And generally, because the property is a little bit further away, because it doesn't look so great, it hasn't appealed as much. So I can go in and normally do a deal with them, often at a lower than market rent as well, because otherwise that property is going to be sitting empty possibly for a while. And then what I've got to think about is what I need to do on that property, how I need to improve it, make it look nice in order to take it back to the market. The fifth and final tip when it comes to finding rent-to-rent deals is more really around the negotiation stage. When you're having the conversation, it's important that you don't underestimate how much you think is going to be required to get the property up and running. So for example, there might be some repair things that need doing. There might be some compliance things like fire doors, emergency lighting that may need to be put into place. There might be furnishing you need to do. Now, some of these things may already be in place. Some of them you might need to improve as well. And then being realistic about the ongoing cost that you're going to have in terms of running that property. So you've got the setup costs, and then you've got the operational costs. The operational costs will such as be your utilities, your gas, electric, water, council tax, TV license, gardeners, cleaners, the internet. All of these costs you're going to be paying each month. So it's being realistic about these two numbers, of how much it's going to cost to set up, how much it's going to cost to run as well. So when you're making your offer and your proposal, that you've considered realistic numbers so you make money. Too often I see and I hear about landlords who've let a property to somebody on a rent basis and they're charging a super high rent for that. And the rent-to-renter is new. They don't really have the experience. And I'm thinking that's a recipe for disaster, because what's going to happen, the rent-to-renter is going to run it for a short period of time. They're going to realize it doesn't work. They're going to do a runner. They're going to try and get out of that situation. And the landlord's going to be there with an empty property again. Whereas if they were more realistic with each other in terms of the rent that's being charged and also the costs that were involved and how that was going to get maybe split even, then it'd be a more fairer, longer lasting relationship. Hey, if you're enjoying these Saj daily videos, then what I'd like you to do is click on my face over here to subscribe to the channel, and also click on the bell in order to get the notifications when these videos are being released. Then what to do next is click on this video here, and I'll see you over here on this video next.